Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Lauren and today's video is going to be a requested one. So I'm going to be talking more about agoraphobia and my experience with that, how I've sort of gotten to a good place with it, and I guess my tips for people going through the same thing. So if you're interested, please keep watching. Also, sorry about the lighting in this video. I'm using my old phone to film this and it's very bright outside, but this is the only time Lila went to sleep so I could film this. So yeah, sorry about the shadows and whatnot. Hopefully it doesn't get too blindingly bright in this. So first of all, just a really quick little backstory for those of you who are new to my channel. If you want the extended version of my experience with anxiety and agoraphobia, I will link my anxiety story video in the description box so you can go check that out. But just quickly, I started suffering from panic attacks about 5-ish years ago, 5.5 years ago. And I didn't know what they were and they kept happening and happening, and they basically got so frequent that I associated being out of the house to having them. And so I became housebound because I was so terrified about going out of the house and having another panic attack that the only place I really felt safe was inside. And so that's how I sort of developed agoraphobia. And I was housebound for about 2 years. Probably one of those years I was sort of getting out, but not really. Like I'd have to go out on my own and I was only going maybe like a minute away or a couple of minutes away to like the shops here and there, but I was still in a pretty bad way. So I'm gonna say I was fairly housebound for that time. And the second year I was pretty much completely housebound, like terrified to go out of the house. And also during that time, I was pregnant with my daughter. And so that kind of made it like a whole different thing as well. I had some depression and anxiety with that too. So that kind of changed the game. And then my daughter was born, and it was when she was around, I'm going to say 4 months old, that I started to really get serious about like getting out of the house and overcoming this like fear of having a panic attack. And then from there, it was about a year until I sort of got good at getting out. And then she's 2 now and I'm in a pretty good space now. So I'm going to say it took me about 2 years to get to this place where I am now. And if you are somebody who's housebound and you're thinking it's going to take me 2 years to get out of the house, that's not the case. That was just sort of my timeline, and I went really easy on myself because I was going through so many other things as well, like being a mum for the first time and all that kind of stuff. I really sort of had my focus kind of all over the place, so that's why it took me such a long time to get to where I am now. And I'll talk more about that later, but it definitely doesn't mean that it's going to take you 2 years to be able to get out of the house. So how I started to overcome my agoraphobia was I started going for walks. And I make that sound like really basic and simple, but it was so difficult. And in the beginning, I could only go like 1 or 2 houses down. And that's what I mean when I say I went for a walk. I would go out of the house for 2 minutes and then come back. And I had my daughter with me who, you know, like I said, she was about 4 months old at that time. So I had her in the pram. I had the pram filled with all of her stuff. And because I was a first-time mum, that was like so much stuff, like everything you could possibly need for 2 minutes out of the house with a baby. And then I had a bag filled with my stuff as well, which was like a change of clothes, a water bottle, a snack, like multiple pairs of headphones, my iPod, a book, some like a journal, like anything that I thought I might need in the event of having a panic attack. So I was like a pack horse in those early days, like going out of the house with this huge pram loaded up with stuff, going down the street for 2 minutes and then freaking out and coming back. So it was pretty full on. It definitely wasn't as easy as it sounds. And I just kept doing that. I tried to get out every day, and there is a supermarket that's about, I'm going to say like a 7-minute walk from my house. And now I can go there without any issue. Like I don't even think about it. I can just walk there and it's like so close. But back then it was so hard, and I could only get a quarter of the way there to begin with and then halfway there. And even getting halfway there was like just so difficult. eventually I managed to get there, and that was really cool. And then once I started to feel not comfortable, but sort of like I had a handle on that, I started to get back out in my car. Now, my car was where like my trigger point was. That's where I was most terrified to be. I think because when I'm in the car, I feel trapped. And it doesn't matter if like, you know, somebody else is driving or it's somebody else's car, or whether it's a bus or a train or whatever. If it's any mode of transport, it freaks me out. So that was going to be the most difficult thing. And I think that was why I was so housebound, because I was so scared of being in my car. I couldn't really go anywhere. So I started going out for drives again, and it was the same thing as going for walks. Like I just started to drive a little way down the street and then come back, and then go a little bit further and then come back. And I was trying to get to this shopping centre that's about 10 minutes away where I used to work. So it's somewhere I was pretty familiar with, and that was kind of my goal, just to get there. I still remember the first time that I went there, and it was when my daughter was born, and I actually got my parents to drive her in their car, and I drove in my car because I was too afraid of having her with me, because it was just such a distraction and just too much. I just needed to focus on just me. And so, yeah, I met them there and we had a coffee, and it was terrifying. And looking back at it now, it's just so bizarre to me that that was such a hard thing. But that just shows me how much of a bad place I was in at the time. So I think in my first exposure video, I went to that shopping center to go to the gym. And so if you watch that, you can probably see how scared I was just driving that distance, like 3 kilometers away. So once I had got there, I started to go there every day and I made that like a regular thing. And then I started to go out with a mother's group. I joined a play group. I started taking my daughter to like story time at the library, and just making like regular routine places to go out, and just making that a part of our routine. And once that had become a really familiar thing, I started to go a little bit further and a little bit further, and it was always just like a little step at a time, but I really built on the momentum that I was, you know, making. And just to give you an example, my daughter asked to go to the shops every single day because she's so used to that being something that we did. So, because in the first year of her life, we went to the shops every single day pretty much, because it was just something I had to do to sort of make it a habit to go and make it a habit to get out of the house. So once that had become a habit for me, it was easier for me to try and go other places as well. And then when she was maybe a year old, roughly, I started to get out to bigger shopping centres, and I started going to social events again. Like I went to a friend's baby shower, which was a really huge deal for me. It was across the freeway, and that was just a point where I hadn't been able to pass. Like, and in my head, I was like, I'm never going to get over the freeway. And to get to this baby shower, it was going to be held at a park, and so for the weeks leading up to it, I practiced driving to this park. And again, I make that sound really casual, like, oh, I just practiced driving to the park, but it was terrifying for me. And I think I did it 4 times, and it wasn't that each time it got less scary, unfortunately. I'd love to say that it was, but it was just that I became more willing to feel the fear of going there, whereas before I just wasn't willing to feel any kind of emotion at all. If there was anything that scared me in even the slightest, I just wouldn't do it. But now I was like, you know what, I need to get back out there. I've gone out every day for like almost the last year and nothing bad has happened. Like, I think I can do this. And I did do it. I got to the event, and it was really, really fun. And it was like the first thing I'd been to where I wasn't going out on my own. Like, I was actually going to a social event and talking to people and seeing people. And so that was kind of like a turning point, I think. And then once I did that, it was just kind of like I just started to push the envelope even further and see, you know, how far I could get. And I started going out to like dinners and things. I went to the movies, which I talked about in a blog post, was something that I said, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And I said I would go to the movies again. Like, I miss going to the cinema. And so I did that. And that was like, all these things were like such big steps for me. And it was just as scary doing them as I imagined it was gonna be. But the thing was, once I got there, I was okay. And once I'd achieved that, I was okay. And I had all this momentum behind me to be like, I've been okay for the last year. I can handle this. And I had the attitude of, let's just see what happens. Like, you know, I'd get in the car and I'd start to panic and I'd think, let's just see what happens. Let's just see how far you can get, instead of immediately turning the car around and coming home, which is what I had done for so long. So that's pretty much how I got to where I am now. It's not really an exciting story. It was just like I said, habit, momentum, and just pretty much doing the same thing every day and just keeping at it always. And I'm still not like completely cured. There's still heaps of places on my hit list that I want to go, like taking my daughter into the city, to the zoo, to the aquarium, going on a holiday, you know, going on a road trip, taking her to the beach, which is somewhere she's never been. There's all these things that I still have to do, but I know that I'm going to do them. Whereas before it was like, I can't even imagine doing that. Like there's just no way. And now it's like, you know what, I'll get there. I am getting there. If you've watched my recent videos, you'll see that I went to a friend's wedding in the Yarra Valley. I went to my best friend's engagement party in the city. So I'm getting to that place where I wanted to be. And for some, it might not seem like such a big change, but for me to look back to where I was when I couldn't even open the front door to now is like just night and day. It's like such a huge difference. So yeah. So my tips for people who are going through the same thing, the first tip I have is to really start focusing on your physical health. This was the thing that really sort of changed the game for me when I stopped focusing on my anxiety so much and focus on myself as like a whole. When you have agoraphobia and you're housebound, it's so easy to treat yourself like shit because you feel like shit. Like it's really hard to be nice to yourself and respect yourself and, you know, do self-care when you kind of hate yourself for being so weak or for being so fearful, and you just feel like crap, so you just don't want to take care of yourself. So instead of waiting until you can get out of the house and you've cured your agoraphobia before you start taking care of yourself, do it the other way around. Start taking care of yourself first, and then it's going to give you a little bit more confidence to be able to get out of the house and deal with those anxious situations. I had IBS in the sort of beginning of my recovery, and I worked really hard to sort of get that under control. And once I did that, it made it a lot easier for me to just go, okay, I don't have to worry about my IBS. I just need to worry about like getting out of the house. And it was just so much easier to not have that like playing in the side of my head, like, oh, what if your IBS flares up? Like I could just forget about that and go, that's sorted out. I'm good with that now. I'm pretty physically healthy. Let's go at this. And when you are feeling physically healthy, it's easier for you to be in touch with your body and to realize which are the thoughts that you need to focus on and which are the thoughts you don't need to focus on. So make sure you're getting enough sleep, but not too much sleep. Make sure you are getting some exercise. If you're housebound, utilize YouTube. There's pretty much every workout video you could ever need on YouTube. So I reckon 20 minutes of exercise a day. Take a look at your diet. Make sure that you aren't eating foods that really aggravate your body and aggravate your anxiety. If you are somebody who drinks Red Bull, V, Mother, Coke, Pepsi, basically any of those soft drinks, you are shooting yourself in the foot. Like, honestly, they may as well rename those cans of panic, because that's pretty much what they are. When you drink a soft drink, it sends your body into overdrive because it's like, it has to work so hard to deal with everything you're putting in there, all the caffeine, all the sugar, all the crap. So like, it just baffles me when people are still drinking soft drinks. So if you suffer from agoraphobia and you're having panic attacks and you're drinking soft drink, stop. Like, that is one really important thing you should do for your body. Just, you know, be kind to your body and go, I'm not going to feed you this stuff anymore. Caffeine was something that I had to cut out. Now I'm at the stage where I can have a coffee every couple of days and I'm okay. But in the beginning, I definitely had to sort of clean up my diet a lot and just really treat my body with respect instead of just drinking to numb the panic attacks and, you know, just feeling like crap all the time. So that's my first tip. I think that's probably one of the most important. Secondly, when you go out, if you manage to get out, if you start to panic, it's so important to stay in the situation. I know you've probably heard this before and it's like the most difficult thing to do, but I'm going to tell you why it's important, and I'll give you a real life example. So when I went to my best friend's engagement party in the city, my dad drove me and my friends to the bus stop, and then we were getting the bus into the city. And when he stopped at the bus stop and we all had to get out of the car, everyone else got out of the car, but I couldn't open the door because I was like, this is the point of no return. Like, if I get out of the car now, I'm going to have to get on the bus and I'm going to have to go, and there's no coming back. So that was when I started to panic. That was when a panic attack sort of started to rise. And I was freaking out, and I'm thinking, you know what? You can just go home with your dad. Like, you don't have to go into the city. Just stay in the car, go home, be done with it. And if I had done that, if I had gone home with dad and not gone into the city, my panic attack would have gone away. Definitely, for sure. The thing is, had I had stayed in the situation, which is what I did, the panic attack was going to go away anyway, because your body physically cannot like sustain a panic attack for a huge amount of time. I think maybe like 5 or 10 minutes is the absolute maximum you're going to go with a panic attack. So it's going to start to rise. It's going to have a peak where you feel like, I absolutely need to escape right now or I'm going to die. And then it's going to fall. And what happens is when people with agoraphobia go out, they have a panic attack, it hits the peak point where they're freaking out and they need to get out. And so they escape, and then the panic attack drops off like it's going to, and they think the reason it dropped off is because I got back to safety. And that's what perpetuates the whole myth of like, I'm safe if I escape, whereas I'm not safe if I stay. But actually, the panic attack is always going to fall whether you stay in the situation or whether you leave. So if you can force yourself to stay in the situation, knowing that the panic attack is going to drop off, it's going to prove to you that you are safe wherever you are. It doesn't mean that you have to run home or run to your, place of safety to feel safe. The safety is within you. The feeling is going to come. You just have to wait for it. And that's what happened. I got out of the car, I sat at the bus stop, and then the panic attack started to fall. And granted, I had like a couple of mini panic attacks on the way there, like once we'd got onto the bus and we were walking through the city, but I knew that they were just going to pass. I knew that they were just going to rise a little bit, peak, and then pass. And so you just got to ride those out. And it's unfortunate that you have to go through that, and it sucks, but it's so much better to know that it's going to drop off than to think that, I need to escape, and when I escape, the panic's going to stop, because it's going to stop if you stay as well. So that's why it's just so important to just stay in the situation. And the more you can teach yourself that lesson, the more that you show yourself that when I stay, the panic does go away, the easier it's going to be for you next time when you start to panic to go, you know what, I don't even need to worry about this right now. And eventually the panic attacks will kind of stop having the same effect, and you won't be so terrified of them happening. So that's my really big tip for when you're out there. My third tip, when you're out and about, if you're starting to feel like you need to escape, and someone asked me about dealing with like social situations, what I used to do was I would not engage. And because I was someone who'd been housebound, I was very used to not engaging. I would isolate myself when I was scared. And so if I was in a social situation, I would immediately go inward and be like, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? I feel this, I feel that, I'm scared, I can't do this, all in my own head. And I used to try and like distract myself. Like I'd look at something on my phone, or I'd do like some breathing techniques. But still that was keeping me in the place of like being too internal. Whereas if you actually engage with your surroundings, like the people who are around you, or just, what is around you, it's a lot easier for you to snap out of that feeling of panic. And so, sorry, there's cockatoos outside that are like super loud every time they fly past. What the hell was I saying? Oh yeah, so back at the same time when I was going into the city, I was freaking out sitting in the car waiting to get out and go to the bus. And then once I got out to go into the bus, I put a movie on my phone, and I was watching this movie on Netflix trying to just calm myself down. But I noticed that after a couple of minutes, I actually wanted to take the headphones out and listen to what the boys were talking about. And I wanted to engage in the conversation, and I wanted to look around and see what was happening. And once I did that, the panic pretty much just went away, because I was just able to just go, oh, so this is what's going on around me, instead of being all like cooped up inside myself and not focusing on anything else. And so that's something that I do all the time now if I'm going out, and especially if I'm like, you know, if someone starts talking to me and I start having that like panicky feeling and I get all sweaty, and I always say the wrong thing in social situations as well, because I'm just so nervous that like I just spew like stupid words that don't even make any sense. And that used to freak me out, but now I continue to engage and I continue to talk, and it just makes it so much easier. So definitely try and engage yourself, try and get involved in what's happening around you rather than going inward and, you know, just thinking, getting like lost in your own head. Again, it's one of the hardest things to actually do because you're so used to doing the opposite. But the more you do that, the more of a habit it's going to become, the more normal it's going to become. Like, say, I know a lot of people, agoraphobics, get really stressed at the grocery store, like standing in line. Nobody likes waiting in line. But for us especially, it can be terrifying. So engage, like look at people in the eye, smile at people, you know, like really sort of try and get involved in your surroundings rather than like looking at the ground or looking in your shopping basket and being like, should I just ditch this and run now? Like, is anyone going to notice if I just run out of this store? Are they going to chase me? Like, you know, just don't get locked in there. Lock yourself with what's going on outside, and that's just going to make things so much easier for you. And actually, I was reading don't even think about it. I was reading a study the other day where it said that people who are really engaged with, you know, the world are like more well. I don't know why I can't make words today, but they're healthier than people who don't. Because I guess when you're just focusing on yourself and focusing internally, I mean, that can be good in some respects, but you get lost. Like, you just forget that there's a whole world out there going on, and it's too easy to sort of, you know, like become dramatic about your own shit. Like to be like, you know, oh, I feel like this and it's so bad. And that's why sometimes when I'm having a crap day, I still just go for a walk, and I immediately snap out of my bad mood because I'm like, oh, like there's people out here, there's other people going about their lives. Like there I was back at home, like getting all stressed about something really irrelevant when all I needed to do was just go outside and just engage in the world. So that's something that I think is a really key thing to do. My tips for getting out if you are housebound is to just take it really, really slowly. I've done a whole post on this on my blog, which I will link, but just go as slowly as you need to. If you need to, like, you know, deal with safety behaviors like I did when I said I took this big bag of stuff out with me, or all this stuff that I might need, if you need to do that, do it. They say that safety behaviors aren't like the best thing, you know, to help with your anxiety, but I think if it helps to get you out of the house, then who cares? Like, if you need to wear all black and have a bag over your head in order to get out of the house, then do that. At least you're getting out of the house. And make it a habit. Try and do it every day. Do it whether, you know, it's raining, whether it's sunny, whether it's hot, whether you've had a lot of sleep the night before or you haven't had a lot of sleep the night before, whether it's late at night or early in the morning. Try and do it at all different times, because that was the key thing that really got me to understand that I am always okay. Like, even if, you know, my child has been up half a night and I've had 2 hours sleep and it's raining and I don't feel well, I was still able to go out and be all right. And doing that and making it a routine, then you have all this evidence behind you to say, look, I've done this every day for the past however many days and nothing really bad has happened. Like, I've survived it. You need to get that momentum behind you, and then it's so much easier to go forward. It's like when, you know, if you stop going to the gym for a couple of weeks and then it's really hard to get back into it. It's like that. You just need to go and get back into it. Once you have that momentum, it's like, I just realized what a stupid example that is for people who are housebound. Just ignore that last example. But yeah, so you just need to get momentum. You need to start doing it, and try and have the attitude of let's see what happens, and take that knowledge with you that if you have a panic attack, it is always going to peak and then fall, regardless of whether you stay or whether you go. So you may as well stay and see the magic afterwards. If there are any other questions you have that you want to know about dealing with agoraphobia, I would love to answer them. These are like my basic tips. I'm trying to keep it really simple because I know there's like a lot of information out there, and it can get really overwhelming, and a lot of it's very conflicting. But that's basically all that worked for me, was just making it a routine, understanding that panic attacks are going to end, and just trying to engage myself and get myself out there rather than staying inside myself, not just inside my house. Well, that's a good time as any to end the video. So like I said, if you have any other questions, just ask them. I'll be happy to answer, and I will link all the stuff down below, especially the blog post where I've dealt with like the steps you need to take to overcome agoraphobia. I hope you're all doing really well, and good luck. You can do it.